are you doing during all of this? Where are you at?
Well, physically, where I'm at is at home. I live in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, Canada. So I'm on the East Coast, and we're okay. Like we've got a bit of an outbreak here in this part of the world as well. So we're dealing with it. Schools are closed, businesses are closed, work is canceled. Like everything is all up in the air. But my wife and I are both self-employed artists, so being at home all the time is not really that much different than our usual lives. And having the kids home, it's kind of like an extended March break or extended summer vacation. It's not what we were expecting right now, but it's not something that we're unused to either. Like it's kind of great. We get to be in our home, which, if my wife she's an actor, if she's off doing a show, she'll be gone for a while in the summertime and not be able to be home. Right now, like all of us can be here in our house together. So that's kind of a good thing. That's the silver lining. Yeah. How are you guys doing down there?
We're doing pretty good. All things considered, still able to put out content like this thanks to artists like you. I'm excited to be able to announce you in a couple weeks here. If people are watching this, they've already seen that you've been announced with everyone else later on in April. Um,
Okay. Right.
you're actually the tail end of our concert series in July of 2021. So this is a huge preview for a lot of
Right.
people.
Yeah.
Um,
Advanced preview.
oh yeah, for sure. Um, but I got a couple questions for you, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Um, when and why did you get into music? Just to start off.
Oh man, that's a loaded. Well, it's not loaded, but it's a long. I mean, I've just always done it. Like I was um when I was a kid, I sang in choir. From like a really like the age 8, and then I joined band. And my parents aren't musicians. It wasn't really something that I was ever pushed into, and we didn't know a lot of other musicians. We didn't go to a lot of live music growing up. We listened to a lot of music at home, but that was kind of it. I mean, it was really just something that I always gravitated towards. I mean, from the moment I was able to do something musical, that was the thing I wanted to do more than anything else. So, um, I fought it for a long time. I even went to university, did a degree in economics, and but I paid for that degree by playing music on the weekends. So it was, it just sort of seemed like this was the path I was destined to go on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What was your? You said you were in band, so I'm assuming your first
Mm,
instrument wasn't the guitar. Was it the saxophone?
no, it was, yeah, that was my first. Well, I mean, technically, my first instrument was the ukulele, but that was a real love-hate relationship. That didn't go very well. so So after the ukulele came, there was a brief period of no instruments, and then I wanted to learn how to play guitar, which is why the ukulele came in. My parents, I think, wisely in some ways, said, "Well, you're 7. Guitars are pretty big and very expensive. School is teaching ukulele for free. Learn the ukulele first." But that didn't go well. So then all instruments stopped for a while, and then when I got into junior high, all the other kids were doing something and I didn't have an instrument. And so I joined band and I started playing saxophone, and I had never really thought about being a saxophone player until the meeting of like going to the band meeting saying, okay, what instrument do you want to play? I just sort of looked around. I'm like, oh, that looks cool. I'd like to play the saxophone. And usually that's the instrument like 10 kids all want to play, and they're like, no, we already have 5 saxophones, you need to play something else. But that year I guess they just didn't have that many, so I got to play it.
Were you starting on alto or tenor? Do you mind me asking?
Started on alto. Not many kids start on tenor, especially if you start at a young age. And you even a lot of arrangements for young children don't have a tenor saxophone in them because they're so big. Like you can't,
Oh yeah.
if you're 8 years old, which is how young some kids start in band here in Canada and probably in the U.S. as well. It's you're just not big enough to play a tenor saxophone. Like my daughter is 8 now, and the alto would be almost big. It'd be pretty big for her, but she could play it. But yeah, so alto is what I started on. But then, I got into university, and that's when I got my first tenor. But I played alto all through school.
Yeah.
and Barry. Actually, they needed a Barry sax player for one band, and so they gave me a Barry to practice on, and I didn't like it, but now I love it. That was a love-hate relationship that actually went in the right direction. Baritone saxophone is the best.
Well, it helps when you can write your own music for the Barry sax too, and
Well,
actually,
hey, that's
yeah.
right. Yeah, I guess so.
Um, when did you start looping? That's or can you actually just start this all off? Can you explain looping for our audience and kind of what that entails and what
Yeah,
it's
sure.
like?
Well, it's basically it's live recording. So you do something, and you can. I've got a looper set up through this microphone, so I could record something and then play it back for you, 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 and then. And so you can layer on top of it and add it more and more and more, and you can come up with different. I mean, basically, you know, sky's the limit as to what you can do with it. You just have to have a creative idea, right? So if you have, rather than just bringing it to a gig and saying, oh wow, I've got a looper here, I'm going to loop this guitar solo and play for 45 minutes, which some people do, and sometimes it works really well. I like to use it as a tool, as in, like, I have a song and there's part of this production that is really great, but me as a solo performer, if I don't have a band with me, I can't do that. But maybe I can find a way with this looper to create sort of, or recreate that moment on stage, without really taking too much time. I find it's one of these devices that works best if it's invisible. If you can't really tell someone is using it, but just sort of the experience all of a sudden becomes like a little elevated, and it's like, oh wow, that's kind of interesting. What's going on there? I don't really know, but this sounds really cool. If you can kind of achieve that, that's when you've really done your job as a looping artist. But using it as, like, hey, like pulling flowers out of a hat, watch me use my looper, then I find, and I'm guilty of that too. Make no mistake, I have done that too. But it works best if it's just sort of like this little extra instrument in the background. And sorry, you originally asked me how I got into it. I got into it because I was becoming a songwriter, moving from saxophone to songwriting, and I only had about 20 minutes worth of songs, and I had a gig that was 3 hours long, and so I went out. And I had seen someone use one of these really well, a guy in Toronto. And I thought, well, I'll just get one of those and I'll just put a saxophone solo on all my songs. So that's what I did. And that gig was a very long gig for everyone. And but it opened up the door for me. And I was like, okay, there's a lot of possibility here if I just work on it. And I can involve it in my show in a creative way, and hopefully, do something a little different that other people aren't doing.
Going off of that vein a little bit, as you've grown as a musician throughout the years with using this device, what have you found to be the early challenges, and what have you found to be kind of the later, more experienced challenges as you've used the device?
Yeah, so the early challenge is getting the tap right. So I mean, it's a computer, and there's only human error with it, really, that can bungle you up. So you just push a button at the wrong time, or you get like using a tambourine with it. Like sometimes I'll loop a tambourine through a microphone. If you don't tap in and out of your section of tambourine exactly right, you're going to have just a tiny little bit on the end, or not quite enough of the length to make it a perfect length. And then every time that loop comes around, it just sort of juts back a little too early or a little too late, and everyone can hear it. And so getting it's like a magic foot, like being able to tap in and tap out at the exact right time. That's an early challenge. And that's probably the biggest challenge. And I do workshops with the looper as well. And I sort of have these different exercises that I get people to do to show them. And it's just like counting to 3, basically. Or counting to 4, but looping only 1, 2, 3. So you loop 1, 2, 3, and then you turn the looper off and you say 4, and then you bring it back in on 1. And it's just sort of it's a way of showing people that like it's important to be able to get in and out of this loop seamlessly, because at the end of the day, you don't want your song to suffer because you can't really use this properly. Like, the song is king. You have to play your song well, and the song has to be a good song. And then if there's a spot for the looper, great. And then if there is, then you got to be able to play it well. So that's a very fundamental early issue you can have with it. Later on, it's just coming up with ideas, really coming up with a really good idea to use it with. Cause like I said before, you can do stuff with this that can be kind of boring after a while. And people are like, oh, he's using the looper again. Here we go. Oh, I know what's coming. He's going to do this and then he's going to do that. And you might be very good at it, but if it starts becoming something that people are anticipating, it can be a bit of a drag because it is a loop. It's just constantly going back over and over, doing the same thing over and over again. So the challenge becomes finding a way for it to not dull your show and actually elevate your show.
Cool. We have a lot of young singer-songwriters kind of in our community. And something that I thought you did really well, we saw you at Arts Market, really enjoyed your
All right.
Something that we normally worry about on our stage is we have a big outdoor stage. I say big, it's really intimate, but when there's just one person on it, you can think that it would swallow that person. And
right.
our Arts Market was very similar, where you would think that, but you were able to really command that stage and fill up the space. What over the years have you found doing solo work that helps you actually command that space?
That's a really good question because I don't get to see myself do it. So it's hard to answer, but I mean, I think probably the biggest thing is having a connection with the audience. Like if an audience member, an audience comes in and watches a show, and it doesn't matter if there's one person or 10 people on stage, if the audience doesn't have confidence that the person on stage is going to be able to do what they're out there to do, then you've lost them. I mean, you don't want a bunch of people kind of going, oh, I hope he does this. Oh, I'm so worried. Like you want them to be completely relaxed and be like, I feel like this person is in control. I'm in for a good time. And that doesn't necessarily always mean playing everything perfectly. Like I make mistakes in every show. I think almost every performer does, but the way in which you deal with it, like I need the audience to know that at every moment I'm out there, I'm in control. Like I know the ins and outs of everything, and the sky could fall, but we're still going to do this show, and it's going to be great, and you guys are going to get your money's worth. Like having an audience believe that, then it doesn't matter how many people are on stage. You can just be that one person. But if you are engaging to an entire audience, then the rest of the stage disappears, and you become the focal point. I mean, some of that also, and we shouldn't just put it all on the artist. A lot of that has to do with the people who work in your theater as well, like the lighting designers and stage managers and people like that who help design a stage before the show even happens, to subtly, without even an audience realizing that the show is focused on this one performer, as opposed to a large. It's a challenge to have one person on a big stage, but experience. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really, really good answer that encompasses a lot. I've been doing a little bit of digging about you, and I saw that we are more than just a concert venue. We also have theater shows that we produce as well. And I saw you dabbled a little bit in composition, it looks like, for theater. And I want you to talk about that process a little bit. What have you enjoyed? What's been your favorite moments? What's been your least favorite? Kind of just riffing off that.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I haven't done a pile of it, but I've done a fair amount of writing for theater. It's it's a different process depending on who you're working with. Like I've worked with playwrights where they'll just send me a scene, and they'll be like, here's a scene, and now we want you to write a song so that we can get rid of this scene. So basically say what this scene is saying in a song and move the plot forward in the way that the scene moves. And I find that to be great. I love doing that because it's very clear. It's like, okay, I can see you need to go from here to here, and I can sort of tell what the mood is. I mean, there's other times where, very early on, not knowing what I was doing and what the playwright knew what they were doing, where they would just say, hey, can you just write I hear the story's about this. Why don't you just start writing music and I'll start writing the book and we'll just see where we go. And it worked, but it was a long process of like, oh, right, we can't use this song that you spent days on. That doesn't work anymore. So now we'll, so but every process is different and every artist works differently, which means that when you take two people and put them together, the process, unless they've been working together, like, you know, Bernie and Elton for years and years and years, you just don't have the same kind of chemistry every single time. So you kind of have to know how to pivot, you know, and work a little differently depending on who it is you're working with. Film is entirely different. You get sent a scene, and you're basically underscoring that scene, and, you know, working closely with a director who hopefully has a good vision of what they want their music to sound like, but also is open enough to receive the ideas that maybe you have as an individual. Like, I mean, it's all, yeah, it's, I don't know if I'm answering your question at all.
No, you are. This is great content.
All right.
Yeah, this is great. Going off of that question, are there any shows that or are any of the shows on Spotify or somewhere on YouTube where our audience can maybe look them up? You can see some of the songs you've written.
Yeah, the plays, no, because they're just not. They're not on. They're small independent plays that are, you know, touring Canada in different, you know, at different times, very rarely, and films are like, they're pretty small indie films in Canada. So I haven't done any features or anything like that. I did one feature, but it was an independent feature that had a shoestring budget. So I don't think you can. There was one short film called Wake that is available online, but again, it is a Canadian website, and I think it's even through our CBC, which is kind of like NPR. And I know that content is blocked in different countries. So I just makes it just sound like I haven't really done anything, and now I'm finding excuses for you not to hear it. But it'd be difficult. Now, all of my music as Ian Sherwood is definitely on Spotify. You can go hear that, or on YouTube. You can find me on YouTube or anything like that.
Now, I have a question for you, because I've listened to a lot of your music. That's just part of the process when we try to pick artists, is if I can sit there and listen to the artist for over an hour and a half, I really want to bring them. A lot of your music sounds familiar. Do you do covers that record them, or is it all original?
No, I think over all of my recorded music, there's only one cover I ever did, and that was on a live record that you probably don't have. I did a Crowded House song, Better Be Home Soon. But that's it. Everything else is original. And I think even there's only one, maybe two songs that were co-writes. Everything else is been written by me. But I do a lot of co-writing. And I do have a couple covers that I can throw into shows, but they're generally, like, I don't do covers. Like, what I'll end up doing is I'll have a song that kind of hits me in a certain way, and I'll have an interesting way of doing it. And then that becomes part of the show, as opposed to, hey, what do you want to hear? You know, kind of thing.
Oh yeah, no, of course. Yeah. I was just saying, because both Non-Believer and Firefly, to me, have a very familiar sound.
All right.
Talking about it for a while, we were like, have I heard this before? Is it a cover of something else? But it's all original.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
It is. Well, you know what they say, there are no new ideas. So maybe they do sound kind of, you know, it's funny. I wrote this one song that sounded tragically close to a Ryan Adams song. And I didn't even realize it. I just wrote this song, and I'm like, oh, this is amazing. This is the best song I've ever written. And I played it for the producer who was doing the record. He's like, dude, we can't put that on the record. And then he played me the song, and it sounded like, I'm like, oh my God, it sounds so much like that song. So so that can happen. And it doesn't, you know, as much as you hear about it, you know, in pulp media and stuff like that, about so-and-so's got a lawsuit against them, it can often happen very innocently. You know, we just listen to a lot of music, and stuff gets in your brain, and when you're creating something, you'd be surprised what comes out, and how you're like, you just hear it in your head, you're like, oh, that sounds really great. I really hope I came up with that. And I'll deal with it later if I didn't.
Great minds think alike, I guess.
Well, there you go. Right. Yeah.
Let's see what other questions. Oh, okay. What is the biggest difference between looping yourself and playing with a live band?
Yeah.
Both.
The pros and cons of both?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, playing with a live band, there's a couple things, like the behind the scenes, touring with a band. If you've got a great group of people that you're touring with, then you just get to hang out with friends, like for 20 hours of the day. And then for 4 hours, you're doing a show, and you're playing music with people that hopefully you enjoy playing music with. So that's amazing. The cons of it are that you have 4 people that you are responsible for, that you have to fly to wherever you're going and look after and make sure they get to the airport and make sure they're in the lobby when they got to be in the lobby, and pay for them. Even if you don't have a gig, they got to be paid. Like, so there are cons, logistic and financial cons to having a band. So that would be a pro doing a solo show. It's like, well, you've only got one person. I know I can I can deal with almost anything. I've slept in rental cars overnight in Walmart parking lots. Like, if if I have to actually roll with a punch, I can do that. It's hard to ask someone else who's a hired gun to do that. But I've been doing this for a while now, so the punches are fewer and far between. Like, I feel like I pretty much know what I'm doing. So, I could get myself to an airport and get a rental car and get to where I'm going. So, being a solo performer, I can show up. My sound check is really quick. I know everything that has to happen with my sound, as opposed to the drummer or the bass player. If they run into a glitch, I can maybe help them with it, but it's their gear. Did they bring an extra 9-volt battery? I don't know. Is there going to be one available? Did the drummer forget his stick bag at the hotel? Like, little things like that. It's like, well, those are things you can't really account for, but I can account for everything that I do. So that takes a lot of pressure off. And also, I've been doing solo shows for like my entire career, and then band shows kind of come and go within that. I know what my solo show can be, and I can zig and zag at any time I want during the show. I can decide, like, seconds before I'm playing a song, that I'm not going to do that one. I'm going to do something different because someone in the audience just made a comment and that made me think of something. Oh, hey, and you can sort of tailor your show to be very special for the audience that you're watching. It's a little more difficult with a band, unless that band has been playing together exclusively for a long time. Like, if the band is the show, then they might have the ability to do that. But if I'm hiring people to play my music, we're pretty much doing the songs that we had rehearsed, right? We're not really, I can say, hey guys, sit out for a second, I'm going to do a solo song. I could totally do that. But, we've rehearsed this music, we want to play it. So I know there's a couple of ideas of pros and cons. One is not better than the other. If I have the right band, there's nothing like touring with a band. It's just, the sound is bigger. You have more of an impact on an audience. It can be really great.
Cool. And then now we get to some of the more fun questions before I ask you to show us more of that looper.
All right.
What's your favorite place you've been to travel?
Oh man, I've been to a lot of places. I'm going to play to the hometown crowd here a little bit and say that coming down to Durham was really great.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never been to North Carolina before, so that was fantastic at Arts Market. Edinburgh is probably one of my favorite cities to go to. I just think it's great. I've had some real luck. I've been there 3 times, and every time I've been there, the weather's been amazing. And I've gone on bus tours and just walked the mile and gone to museums and took an art class that was being offered for free on a sidewalk one day. Like, it was just kind of like, wow, this city is amazing. Scotland in general is a really great place to go. So I would be sort of high on my list. Lots of places in Canada too. Like, I did a bunch of gigs up in Dawson City, Yukon, which is up by Alaska. There's a real way of life up there that's unbeatable. You don't really find it anywhere else. It's so secluded and isolated. And Dawson is it's where the gold rush happened in 1898. So after the California gold rush happened in the 1840s, everyone kind of started migrating north, and then gold was discovered in 1898, many years later, really. But still, there were people who remembered, and they traveled farther up to the Yukon. And so now Dawson City is kind of like an homage to that time. Like, all the buildings are from, or look like they're from, the early 1900s, and it's all their whole economic structure is based on tourism, basically, at the end of the day. So there's a casino that's there, and I played in the casino. I played music there, and it's wild. The place is crazy.
Of all of those places, what's been your favorite regional food that you've had that might be unique?
Oh man, favorite regional food. I haven't gone to too many places that are really outrageous. As far, like, most of the cultures I've been to have been and the U.S. and Australia. It's like they kind of just all look like us and eat the same kind of food. But I discovered that haggis is actually pretty delicious.
Really?
Yeah, it's just a spiced meat. It was really great. I started like one of my first days in Scotland. I got up in the morning and I went down to a little cafe, and the guy said, "Would you like to have a Scottish breakfast?" And I thought he was pulling my leg, and I'm like, sure, why not? But it's a real thing, an English breakfast, a Scottish breakfast. And he brought out this giant plate of food, and on it was haggis. But I didn't know it was haggis until after I had eaten it. And he's like, "Did you like the haggis?" And I'm like, "I had haggis?" And he said, "Yeah, that thing right there that you ate." I'm like, "Oh my God, yeah, that was really yummy." So from then on, I was like, okay, this is not such a big deal. Maybe I'll even make this when I go home, which I haven't.
Yeah, it's never the same when you try to make something home.
Not necessarily. That's right.
So let's kind of see what you got with the looper. What fun things you have cooked up for us?
Okay, sure. Well, I thought maybe I'd play a song here that uses a looper kind of in the middle of it here, and you can feel free to stop me if it's not going well.
No, you're good.
No, we need. All right, here we go. Open my eyes, and what do I see? It's you on my bed, and you swearing at me, saying, "Me on your money." It's me on your money. I ain't got no money, baby. Oh, what can I say? Old in court with my last fist of dollars. Drinks are all me boys. Well, that's when you holler saying, "Me on your money." It's me on your money. Well, you've got this wrong. My love's on the dole. I ain't got no money. So be careful what you wish for. I need love. You need nickels and dimes. But it's me on your money. Oh, what can I say? I see love, you see dollar signs, but it's me or your money. I'll find some money someday. Do, 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 do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, no, do, do, do. Ooh, 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 ba, 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 ba. Me on your money. Oh, no, me on. I wanna make this easy for you. Oh, my money's like time, and it's just passing through. I need love, you need nickels and dimes, but it's me on your money. I see you love, you see dollar sign. Oh, but it's me on your, it's me on good. I hope to find some money, I need some money where I need some money where I need some. Oh, and I hope to find some money, so someday, I hope to find some money someday.
Cool.
Oh, I know what we can do. Here, let's try this. As I went down to the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, sinners, let's go down, come on down, come on, sinners, let's go down to the river to pray. As I went down to the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, sinners, let's go down, let's go down. Come on down, come on, sinners, let's go down, down to the river to pray. As I went down to the river to pray, studying about that good old way, shall wear the starry crown. Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, sinners, let's go down, let's go down. Come on down, come on, sinners, let's go down, down to the river to pray. Down to the river to pray.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. But thank you for your time. Thank you for everything.
My pleasure. Yeah, yeah.
Is there anything else you want to say to the people of Woodstock, Georgia?
No, I just can't wait to come down there and meet you guys because you know, it's been. I hope you guys are doing well through all of this, and hopefully it'll be better times when we make this all happen.
You know, by July of 2021, I think it will be.
That's right. We'll have. Oh my gosh, it'll all be fun.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon, Ian. Thank you so much.
Thanks, much appreciated. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.